Creatine is one of the most well-researched supplements out there, and it is a staple for most gym bros, including my boyfriends. In recent times, creatine has been heavily pushed upon women, also claiming that it might have other benefits besides muscle building.
Creatine and omega-3 fatty acids, two supplements I recommend everyone take regardless of a blood panel.
But what we also see is it's beneficial for all the fast energetics in our body. So we think about brain, we think about gut, heart, all of the things that use energy quickly because it has to. Creatine is involved.
It has been everywhere, and I also started getting FOMO after watching all of the videos explaining all of the benefits it has. But when everyone is trying to influence you to add another item to your shopping cart, and as women we already have enough items on our shopping cart, you start to wonder if it is not all about making some extra money. This is why today we're going to investigate the different properties of creatine for women especially, besides muscle building. Some of them include improvement in cognitive function, sleep, and also management of energy levels throughout our hormonal fluctuations. The two main sources we're going over is one review of creatine studies that is non-biased, there is no conflict of interest, and another review which specifically focuses on the benefits that it might have for women throughout their lifespan, but two of the authors of the study are involved with Creapure, which is a company whose label is probably on your creatine supplement. Therefore, you might notice a little bit of bias, especially on the second study. Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Clementina and I do health, nutrition, fitness content here on YouTube. I graduated with a bachelor's degree in nutrition sciences and a master's degree in food chemistry recently, and today we're talking all about creatine. We're going to start with the basics of creatine for those of you who are not familiar with it. Creatine is no stranger to the human body. Our body actually synthesizes creatine in concentrations about 1 gram per day, and it's mostly stored in your muscles and some of it is also in the brain. Creatine is composed of 2 amino acids, arginine and glycine. Its main function is to recycle the ATP molecules and regenerate them. Therefore, it is very important for your energy metabolism. After exerting its function, creatine is metabolized to creatinine and it exits your body throughout the kidneys and then with your urine. This is why creatinine is also a marker that doctors use when examining your kidney function. The hype around creatine began in 1992 when there was a study by Harris et al. That investigated the supplementation of 20 grams of creatine per day over a short period of time, which led to an increase in muscle creatine storages up to 20% in athletes. Since then, creatine has been widely investigated for its positive impacts in exercise. Before getting into the studies, you need to know a few key points about exercise physiology. Your body has a preferred source of energy depending on the exercise duration and intensity. The three main energy sources are fats, glucose, and creatine. Fats and glucose are preferred when you perform longer duration exercise that is not that intense, and they are metabolized also using oxygen. If the duration of the exercise is shorter and you have medium intensity, then your body starts shifting to glucose but throughout another pathway without using oxygen, because the demand for energy is higher than the oxygen that you can metabolize at the time. And when you perform very short time high intensity exercises, then your body also starts using creatine to regenerate the energy storages. And this is why creatine has been found mostly beneficial for interval training types of exercise, such as strength training, where you have low reps and a lot of weight, and also high intensity interval training. With these types of sports, if you do not have enough creatine in the muscles, then its storage is depleted and your body also starts using a lot of the glucose with this non-oxygen pathway, which leads to the buildup of lactate. Lactate is the byproduct that also leads to muscle soreness. This in the end results in higher muscle fatigue than if you had larger creatine storages. This is why creatine has been found very beneficial for such types of sports, and it does not make much of a difference in endurance sports such as marathon runners. Also, if you're a Pilates princess, it might not benefit you as much as it does gym girlies. On the other hand, the water retention that comes with creatine might also negatively impact the performance of endurance athletes, since for them this is some extra weight that they might have to carry, which would technically slow them down a little bit. But the extra water storage is very beneficial for other types of exercise, since it also leads to better hydration of the cells and more efficient recovery and prevents the onset of fatigue. You see how it makes a lot of sense with the exercise physiology that creatine is mostly used by people who do strength training. The most widely consumed form of creatine is creatine monohydrate. It's also the most well-researched one. This is why also the authors of the paper suggested that the best supplement that you can take is creatine monohydrate. There are also other forms emerging on the market such as creatine hydrochloride, creatine gluconate, creatine ethyl ester, etc. Also combinations with vitamins, proteins, and so on. But there are not enough studies on them to say that they would be better and that they are as safe as creatine monohydrate. On the topic of adverse effects, we already mentioned water retention. This is a very positive effect for some people and not that positive for others. Other possible adverse effects that have been reported, but in very low numbers, are impairments of kidney function or liver function. This could also be attributed to a low quality supplement, not only to creatine itself. This is why creatine is generally thought not to have adverse effects if you follow the protocols. Creatine supplementation is also not advised to anyone that has existing kidney problems. It could also affect your results if you do a test at the doctors for kidney function, since when you're ingesting more creatine, the amounts of creatinine that you're excreting would also be higher. Generally, there have also been studies that examine the supplementation of creatine in healthy athletes over a much longer period of time, such as 5 years, and no adverse effects were found. Also, no excessive amounts of creatine were consumed to the recommended intake that you would see on your creatine supplements. Here I have the one that my boyfriend uses, and it says to take 3 grams of creatine per day. On some supplements it would say 5. 5 grams per day is also generally the dose that is investigated in the long duration studies. Any higher concentrations than that have not been really examined over longer periods of time and they're not advisory. The last thing that researchers here highlighted were potential benefits for specific groups such as vegetarians and vegans. And here the argument is that they generally ingest lower amounts of creatine with their food, since creatine is mostly present in animal products such as fish, meat, and eggs. Secondly, vegetarians and vegans that are not supplemented with B12 could have a deficiency in this vitamin, especially vegans, which leads to the impaired generation of the amino acid methionine, which is involved in the generation of creatine. Therefore, they would not be able to create as much creatine as someone that does not have a vitamin B12 deficiency. Another thing that the researchers here discuss is the ongoing research about creatine supplementation for improvement of cognitive function. There have been some studies that analyzed the supplementation of higher dosages of creatine between 10 and 20 grams, and they found that there is an improvement in sleep, memory. This is an ongoing field of research, and as I already explained, also the researchers highlight this. The further studies need to be conducted with larger groups of people, also over longer durations with different dosages for the safety and efficacy of the protocols to be correctly evaluated. I also forgot to mention that you can do both a loading protocol, normal protocol, which is ingesting 5 grams a day over longer periods of time, or have a loading phase for a few weeks where you take more and then it again goes to maintenance with the 5 grams per day. Generally, it does not seem to make a difference over time which one of the pathways you go down. In the concluding sentences, the authors also said that it might be more beneficial to take creatine creatine for certain periods of time and then discontinue it, and currently such protocols of periodization of the creatine intake are also under investigation. You do not have to take it throughout the whole year. Now moving on to the second paper, where we have some concerns that there might be some bias. We're going to talk only about the effect that creatine supplementation has on women. The main argument here is that creatine generation in a woman's body is also impacted by the hormonal levels. When you have higher levels of estrogen is also where the creatine generating enzyme is most active. At times where your estrogen levels are low, you do not generate as much creatine. Those times would be during the follicular phase of your menstrual cycle and post-menopause. The studies on women, exercise performance and creatine are very conclusive that it has great benefits on strength training. Some people also highlight the fact that women have generally lower creatine storages than men. This is why they can be better responders. Additionally, here the authors concluded that it could also be beneficial for aerobic sports, so the longer duration, lower intensity sports, which is the first main difference that it had from the other review, which is in favor of creatine. You can have your own opinion on that. I think it has to do with the bias of the paper. The second point that raised a red flag for me was creatine supplementation during pregnancy. The main argument here, it is mostly an opinion, there is not yet any research on pregnant women taking creatine, is that creatine levels are much lower in pregnant women because there is a higher demand. Low creatine serum concentrations have also been linked to preterm birth and other pregnancy complications. There is no protocol that is recommended. It is still a field of research that requires some studies. There is no evidence on, as I said, on pregnant women taking creatine or anything. With postmenopausal females, there have been some studies which found that supplementation with creatine combined with exercise does not result in changes in bone density, but it does improve overall strength. Creatine supplementation in postmenopausal women without the exercise factor does not seem to improve these parameters, so you need to always have the two. On the point of creatine a cognitive function, here the authors explained that creatine supplementation again can be very beneficial for people that suffer from higher loads of stress, can improve their cognitive function and augments any energy depletion because of sleep deprivation and so on. It also went on to discuss how women process stress differently than men and often suffer from sleep deprivation due to menstrual cycle disturbances. It also talked about how women are more engaged in multitasking, which is what makes them more stressed. It was a bit weird in my opinion, this whole paragraph. And at the end of the paper, the authors put a dosage protocol that one can follow depending on whether they want to take creatine for muscle building or for improving their mental health. As you probably already noticed, this paper did not pay much attention to the possible side effects. It kind of brushed over them, just saying that the research has not found any side effects of creatine, but I did not like the way that it was portrayed here. The whole aspect was very neglected. I think the first review managed to highlight the benefits of creatine without neglecting the possibility of it having any side effects if the correct protocols are not followed. While with the second review, as I was reading it, I was definitely feeling like they were so hard trying to sell me something. If I had to make a conclusion based on everything about creatine that I explained, it would be that creatine is definitely very beneficial for muscle building, improving energy levels, and if you're doing resistance training, you might consider taking creatine, and you should not suffer from any side effects as long as you're following the protocol that is written either on the package or, as the studies here say, up to 5 grams per day if you decide to do the normal protocol protocol without a loading phase. Any higher dosages than that have not been investigated enough to be able to say if they are safe over a longer period of time or not. Probably the most important thing here is also to choose a high quality supplement, since we've all heard horror stories about people that took some kinds of supplements, protein powders, creatine, whatever, over a longer period of time, and they had liver or kidney problems. This is often due to other substances that are present, and it is important to choose something that has had some kinds of third-party testing. For instance, you can go for an NSF certified for sports supplements. I would personally not recommend creatine to anyone in these higher dosages of consistent 10 grams per day for improvements in cognitive function due to the lack of data. The field is still rapidly developing. Both of the reviews are very recent. The first one was from 2021 and the second one is from 2024. To me, this whole trend reminds me a little bit of the cycle syncing trend, especially with the point that they made about hormones. Right now, everyone is trying to tell you left and right that you need to manage your whole lifestyle around your menstrual cycle. This could be another strategy to expand the market of creatine and just sell larger numbers. Also, everybody's body reacts differently to supplements, and there has been some anecdotal complaints going around TikTok that some women get acne, some women reported urinary tract infections. You do not know how your body is going to react to it. So if you try to take it and if it doesn't work at you and you get some kind of adverse reaction, then just don't take it. You are managing without creatine just as fine until this moment. You do not have to take something just because it is such a huge trend right now. Thank you so much for being here with me today. I hope that you enjoyed the video. If you did, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment down below if you want me to discuss another topic, and I will be seeing you next time.